And I want to move on, too, because there's so much of this trade stuff. It's really starting to come together, and it's very important for us in Australia here to understand what is happening with some of these deals, because just as Trump announced this landmark deal with the UK, the White House has also issued a warning to the EU, saying that their proposal to retaliate against American tariffs would be a grave mistake. So are we seeing a splitting off here of Britain from the EU even further, I guess, than we saw with Brexit in 2016?
Yes, I was actually the one that asked Peter Navarro, the top trade advisor to the White House, that question outside the White House today. And I think we're seeing this idea where Starmer went in with very sort of, he showed Trump respect. He brought the letter out from King Charles. He invited Trump to another state visit. There was this sort of, show of respect and things like that. Whereas the EU has taken a different approach. The Trump today mentioned that, the president of the EU Commission, Ursula von, I can't remember her last name right now, but is a sort of a woman that they respect. But at the same time, the EU is coming out with very sort of stringent terms in how they're going to react to these tariffs if the Liberation Day tariffs hold steady. And so I think that we'll see, maybe some behind the scenes, there's going to be a little bit more brokering and a more diplomatic approach. Otherwise, I think that you might suffer under these trade negotiations.
Indeed. And I want to just ask, too, because there's a very important Australian angle for this with the UK trade deal. One of the things that has been reported is that there's an ability for the U.S. to flag concerns about Chinese investment in the UK. Now, obviously, Australia will be trying to find our own way through with the United States. We also have a lot of dealings with China. Is this sort of boxing out of China going to be a feature, you think, of future trade deals as the Trump tariffs, which are really about punishing Beijing for all of their anti-competitive behaviors, moves forward?
I think this is something that the U.S. and the White House is very mindful of. I think when we had the sort of the post-match analysis of the Liberation Day tariffs, I think one of the main criticisms is that this is a way that the U.S., once had lots of friendly relationships overseas with their allies in a way that maybe could help them confront China, particularly not only economically, but maybe potentially security-wise, if something was to happen with Taiwan. And the idea of sort of the U.S. not being a great sort of peacetime ally came up because, what will happen when something happens in the future. And so I think this is something that they are mindful about. And this is a way to bring people back to the table, because we obviously saw China also say if other countries of their allies sort of use the U.S. tariff threats as a way to sort of isolate China, that China will also respond. So I think this is a really smart policy from the US, because it's sort of fixing a gap within their trade policy writ large.
Naomi Lim, thank you so much for joining me and explaining it to us. It's fascinating to watch, as you say, the after-action reports on these Liberation Day tariffs and what's going to happen next. Thank you so much for joining me, as always.